Hi, everybody. I'm Abhishek Nayak. I'm the CEO and co founder of Appsmith. I'm very excited to bring what we've learned about AI at Appsmith, as well as uh, have a discussion with Arpit and Shekhar about what they've seen in AI applications. So, with me, I have Arpit and Shekhar today. We are going to have a good discussion about applications of AI. We're going to hear from Shekhar about what he's seen in the startup landscape of AI. And in this conversation today, we are going to cover use cases of AI, but we are also going to cover what's going to happen in AI in the future and what are all the potential areas where AI is not really succeeding as well. So we have a bunch of different material to cover today. And let me go ahead and start with an introduction of Arpit and Shekhar. Uh, Arpit is my co-founder and CTO at Appsmith. But before that, Arpit and I, we also started an AI company called Bicycle AI, where we were building a co-pilot for customer support agents to reply to uh, any support requests very quickly. Welcome, Arpit.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
And I then have Shekhar, who's a partner at Accel. Uh, Shekhar at Accel has been investing a lot in SaaS and most recently investing a lot in AI. Very excited to have you here, Shekhar.
Awesome. Thanks for this opportunity, Abhishek.
Shekhar, I want to first actually kick this off with asking you, what have you been seeing in AI? You just mentioned to me that you've been meeting startups in the Valley. You're also based in India, so you're getting a pretty good view of what's going on in the world. Would love to hear from you in summary of what have you been seeing recently.
Great question, Abhishek. The market is what I call as very fluidic. It is
Mhm,
changing very rapidly. If you look at globally in US and a little bit in France, there is core LLM infrastructure projects, significant
mhm,
number of them, where the core LLM models are being built of high capacity and high value, many of them being very horizontal, and also
mhm,
some are open source and some are closed source, some are semi controlled, some are kind of, there's no controls and so on. The second aspect, rest of the world, including India and many even in Valley, we are seeing some sort of applications, verticalized applications being built on top of this LLM models.
mhm,
We are starting to see many of those examples where verticalized apps are starting to do a far better job than the horizontal LLM apps. And changes are happening daily with
mhm,
respect to new ideas, new concepts, and new expectations, and also a lot of FUD around what people believe is possible versus what may be a reality.
hmm. Got it. So one of the more interesting points that you mentioned here was that in some cases you're saying vertical AI applications perform better than the horizontal AI applications. Uh, could you talk me through some examples?
Yeah, so like even Accel, we have done two recent investments. One is called Assembly.ai, which is for voice to text or speech to text. And if you look at the quality they are getting, a number of startups they're building on top of them, especially when there are numbers and when there is a mixed acronyms and so on, they're doing a far better job, which is focused on that part versus a generic multimodal LLM models. Similarly, we have another company called Synthesia, which is for generation of video from text for L&D use cases, learning and development use cases, or enterprises generating videos that they can share with their customers or internally, or for onboarding folks or some sort of an instruction set. So all of these use cases are they're purpose built Can
Mhm.
somebody use OpenAI or Google models and to do it? The answer is yes. But instead of you doing all of them, they package it really well and make it extremely easy to generate a reasonable quality outcome that is ready to share with your customers. So these are some of the few examples we are seeing already. Our Freshworks doing a support related AI models that is starting to respond back to the questions with, like, especially L1 support
Hmm.
requests. The responses are, it's doing reasonably well already. In fact, some of the numbers I'm hearing is 30, 40, 50% of the questions are being responded and so on. So in general, what we are seeing is there is horizontal where consumers are using it, but as you go to the enterprise and enterprise use cases, they're starting to become a bit narrower.
Hmm. That makes sense. So I think the good news for startups here is OpenAI is not going to succeed at everything. There's a bunch of different things where a multimodal experience that's provided by OpenAI will actually not meet the expectations and not serve the purpose as well. I think that's really good news for startups everywhere. And the examples that you gave about Synthesia and Assembly, I think these sound like really good examples where you can of course use a horizontal platform, but because the needs in those verticals are so deep, uh, companies will probably be better served by choosing a vertical player who specializes in generating voice or in generating video. So
Yeah.
that's really good to hear.
One caveat I would add, Abhishek, is, see, there is also a time axis. What I
Mhm.
mean by that is, if you look at in the last few years, we have seen products where AI has been infused with machine learning and analytics,
Mhm.
right? And that has been there. We have seen the recommendation engines and
Mhm.
prediction engines that have been very powerful. Now, what you're seeing today is some sort of a co-pilot models that are being built
Mhm.
with using either LLM and a mix of different LLM models along with machine
Mhm.
learning. But when you look at the time axis of 5+ years or a little bit longer, the new thing, the rage is about the agents, which is
Mhm.
autonomous agents that does the work of a specific role.
Mhm.
And that is the part I feel may be horizontal, may be vertical, may be trained, and a horizontal agent trained for a specific vertical. So it
Mhm.
is up for grabs. It will be very hard to predict how that would shape up. But at least in
Mhm.
the first two cases, specific to AI add-ons or as a co-pilot model, they are becoming more vertical.
Got it. That makes sense. I think, like you pointed out, having a fully operational employee and AI agent, that does seem to be a bit far away, but that's like the holy grail that people want to get to, where you have
Yeah,
a real task being completed end to end by an AI agent. Yeah,
yeah, agreed.
that makes sense. Now, with this, I'm just gonna take a few minutes to talk about what we've seen around AI use cases at Appsmith. So I'm just going to present some data that we've gathered from uh, Appsmith customers as well as other businesses that use AI but might not be using Appsmith. Uh, Firstly, I just want to point out, we're looking at the Gartner hype cycle here. It does seem like we are at the very top of inflated expectations. There's probably still a little more to go, but it does seem we're at the top of inflated expectations. We're at an all-time high of AI investments. We're also at an all-time high of consumer visibility of AI and consumer interest in AI. AI has become part of dinner table conversations at almost every single household, where people are talking about either AI replacing jobs or talking about how AI has helped them do something really interesting and unique. So we're at the very peak, but like it happens with every technology cycle, we do expect to go through a trough of disillusionment where we're going to find out certain use cases are just not right for AI. And that's why we're going to see AI actually succeed for very specific high value use cases, while the rest of the riffraff might just disappear. And in this conversation, I'm hoping uh, we can actually uncover some data, uncover some use cases which helps anybody who's listening to this choose the right high value use cases so that they can actually survive the trough of disillusionment. And at Appsmith, we have a lot of customers and community users who are already using AI applications inside Appsmith. So we're sort of getting a front seat view of what people are using AI APIs for and what are the use cases that are actually successful. So we're going to talk a bit about that as well. Uh, so we did a survey. This was a couple of months ago. We surveyed about 140 IT and engineering professionals, and most of these professionals belong to enterprises with more than 500 employees, but they were also uh, represented by small and medium companies as well. And uh, these 140 professionals, they primarily belong to the tech sector, which meant consumer tech, SaaS, etc. But there was healthy representation from financial services, healthcare, government, education as well. So we surveyed all these professionals to identify where have they used AI, where are they succeeding, and what are the things that they are excited about and not so happy about. So let's dig into some of their answers. The first thing that I found out was that 75% of companies are actually integrating AI inside their internal applications. And this is pretty interesting because I think a lot of AI use cases that we read about on social media or on news articles is about customer facing applications, which could be generative AI, could be AI based chat, could be some sort of like a co pilot for their customers. But we found it really interesting that uh, majority of our respondents here, they're excited about using AI to improve operational efficiency, to improve employee productivity. And those were the topmost use cases. Versus we found that using AI to improve customer experience and customer satisfaction showed up fourth on the list. And using AI to produce a new product or a new feature that can help them grow revenue, that was number five on this list. So that was really interesting to see.
Abhishek, one thing to add here, I recently met several CIOs of large enterprises. And as the enterprise size goes up, what you are seeing is people are tending towards more internal use cases versus external use cases, predominantly because the confidence in the overall model to produce kind of the quality of the responses and also certainty of the quality of the responses without destroying the brand. People are still uncomfortable for external use cases, so people are preferring internal use cases to show that it actually works, as you are showing that. But that is more overwhelming in larger enterprises compared to mid-sized enterprises. Please go on.
That makes sense. So what it sounds like is that there's a little bit of distrust on AI capabilities today, and therefore people expect AI to perform better when there's like a human involved. When somebody who's an internal employee or somebody who can actually pilot or use the AI as a co-pilot and drive some results, that's probably better than directly exposing AI to customers.
Yeah, and I think it forms a great beachhead for all of these large enterprises to figure out what the bounds of AI sort of looks like. What is it good for? What is it not good for? Where is it doing well? And having an internal facing application that is improving efficiency, so it's saving dollars, and hitting your bottom line directly, while still figuring out the boundaries would be a great sort of meeting point for large enterprises to adopt AI.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's just in time, right? Considering the amount of pressure that every single company is facing around reducing costs, this could not have come earlier. And I believe that must also be driving a lot of these experiments here.
Yeah.
And the one more point I felt I heard recently with while interacting with the CIOs is that the internal use cases where there is already well defined process, well defined data, lots of use cases. For example, say internal IT support, where there is
Hmm.
a request coming from employees to internal system and responses are there, and that FAQs are there, that I can reuse all of them to build an automated response system as a good
Hmm.
example,
Hmm.
where people felt like I can show value quickly compared
Hmm.
to an external support where I'm not sure will customers rate us high, or will I give a wrong answer, and the concerns around that as an
Hmm.
example.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think alluding to Arpit's point about enterprises creating a beachhead, one of the things is uh, large companies to very large companies, they have a lot of internal data, and that's going to help create a much better internal AI system versus what a smaller company can do. And companies are taking advantage of that like they should. Uh, and I also believe we might see some of these internal use cases then being productized and then turning into a new source of revenue, uh, especially if you're already in that business. I'm sure Freshworks must have first used AI internally to answer their customer questions before introducing it as a product and a feature.
Agreed. That's the way every company is thinking about. First, build confidence internally and learn about how to do this, because there are still a significant number of open-ended questions if you're exposing to the outside world in terms of the governance, in terms of the data, in terms of the privacy, and and also authenticity of the data you have used to train within the corporation as well, because many copies of the data exist with sometimes even conflicting information. Just
Mhm.
cleaning up of the data and using that for training is also a challenge. So I think internal use case is the way I believe you will see a first set of deployments before you see a significant number of deployments for external use cases.
Hmm. This is a great segue into our next results, which are around use cases. Uh, so we spoke about use cases at a little bit at the start, where we spoke about use cases which are vertical versus horizontal use cases, where you have a co-pilot mode, as well as use cases where AI can autonomously perform a function. Here's what we found from our data. Uh, First and foremost, companies seem to be focused on improving data analytics and analysis using AI. That seems to be like top of mind use case for most of our respondents. Uh, the second use cases are around what Shekhar you pointed out, chatbots for internal IT assistance and IT support. That's again top of mind for a lot of our respondents. And these two use cases are something that I've heard repeatedly from just anecdotally as well. Uh, in case of the first one, you can now do data analysis even if you don't have knowledge of your DB schema or knowledge of SQL. And this really means more people inside your organization can have access to the insights that were locked up in your data. But because of AI being able to generate the right queries and AI being able to understand the DB schema better, this means you can now do analysis a lot better. Then the other top use cases that we've seen, the third one is acting like a co-pilot to engineers when they're writing code. This has obviously been enabled a lot because of VS Code, but we've also seen other vertical software companies show up where they are now enabling you to create a custom uh, code co-pilot on top of your tech only, and on top of your code repos. That's something that we are seeing happen as well. The fourth one we are seeing is business intelligence, a little bit related to the first point of data analysis, but aimed at execs and aimed at business users here. That's the fourth thing that shows up. The fifth one is document analysis and summary. This is again a pretty common use case that we've seen as a demo for generative AI, uh, where you upload a document and then you're able to query the document and ask questions of that document so that you can actually get your uh, uh, questions answered a lot quicker versus reading an entire document. This is where we are seeing a lot of legal bot type of use cases. At Appsmith, we've actually seen a bunch of these legal bot type of use cases that have been built by some of our community members, as well as we've done a whole video around this where we've built a lawyer, an AI lawyer, using generative AI. So that's something that we are again seeing. And then to round off the top, the top five here, we are also seeing chatbots for other sort of employee support, like HR support, legal support, insurance support. That's again something that we've started seeing. One of the things that surprised me about the list here was that uh, the the two of the lowest use cases actually seem to be image generation. We've seen a lot of hype around Midjourney, DALI, etc. But those are use cases that at least these respondents here are not talking about much. Maybe because they don't find so many use cases inside their organizations for image generation, but that's something that's at the very last of the list. The other thing that was surprising was sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis was something that was really hot in the previous AI generations, but in this AI generation, it seems like it's not that exciting for people anymore. So that was again like a bit surprising for me to see here. Arpit, is there anything that caught your eye here among these use cases?
Uh, Yeah, actually, for me, I think you can actually split this entire graph in half, and everything on the right-hand side was what we saw in the previous AI hype cycle, as you saw sentiment
Hmm.
analysis, classification problems, etc., which more traditional machine learning algorithms, more traditional ways of doing AI ML have solved in previous cycles. A lot of the stuff that we're seeing on the left-hand side, whether it's product insights, document summary, analysis, etc. That is like new use cases that are surfacing. Those are new things that are being possible today because of large language models, and that weren't possible with, or much harder to do with more traditional AI techniques. So for me, that was the interesting sort of split. So between AI hype cycles, we are seeing solved problems not show up again, and new things being possible.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Arpit. Thank you. Uh, for anybody who wants to see more details of this graph, we're going to be publishing this ebook so you can dig in more into the actual data. I want to move on to the next piece of data here, which is what is holding companies back? Why are they unable to move as fast with AI innovation and AI use cases as they want to? Uh, the first and foremost, which shows up quite a bit, is costs. I think people are still trying to figure out how much should they invest in AI, as well as what should be the operational costs of using AI APIs or your own open source LLMs for servicing a need. That's something that's showing up. The second and third thing that are showing up is lack of AI development resources and lack of general development resources. People are still struggling to find talent that is experienced with AI and talent that is interested in using AI to build something. That's something that has still been a struggle, and especially in an environment where companies have been reducing sizes of their engineering teams. This has been a common concern that's holding people back. Uh, One of the common things that did show up was 41% of our respondents said they were afraid of sensitive information reaching AI providers or uh, sensitive information being exposed to the internet. So, data security was a huge concern for a lot of our respondents, and for very, very good reason. Uh, if you don't have the right ways of securing your data and training LLMs or using AI APIs, it's going to be hard for companies to actually adopt AI and AI products. So I think this is something that I believe is a ripe space for startups to help enterprises. Shekhar, here have you seen any startups enable this, improve data security
Yeah.
for companies?
So it's a very good chart here of why companies are afraid. So there are two aspects you're talking about here. One, say, business analytics use case we saw in the previous slides. In the business analytics case, say I have trained the data with as much of and trained the LLM model with the data I have, and if say in the business analytics, if I know my product wise churn or product wise churn by quarter and regions or by even segment of customers, the first question always people have is it going back into, as you said, is outside my control of the data.
Mhm.
So that is one big question. The second big question you're asking is about who has access to that information. Can
Hmm.
an entry level person ask the question about the churn? What should be the response at that time versus a director of the product is asking that question?
Hmm.
This access control of who is asking this question and how a response have to be modeled based on how much of information I can give it back. There is no such control system today in the LLM models, and that's the biggest question I heard among the enterprise adoption use cases. So they're
Hmm.
kind of struggling to make it open to everybody because it can start giving information that they're not supposed to know,
Hmm.
and they don't have a way to do this with AI engineers or the underlying architecture or infrastructure to control what percentage of information I can give it versus what how much details I can give it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting because uh, I hadn't thought of this as a big concern, which is having sort of a access plane for answering questions. So, for
Like the think
example,
of Abhishek, you in your own
mhm,
employees, like a entry level engineer trying to
mhm,
ask the question of what is the this customer, how much do they pay us?
hmm,
Are they enabled or not? Versus a sales
mhm,
guy asking the question.
hmm,
How do you respond back? How does the LLM model, which has been trained with all this data,
hmm, hmm, hmm,
right? First of all, even acknowledging that this specific company is a customer of yours, may be that as a company policy may not want to do that part.
hmm,
Versus if that person wants to understand the question about how many leaves I have, then you need to
hmm,
respond back. So what part of the access control you want to enforce is the question people are asking.
hmm.
I don't know, Arpit, have you seen
Yeah.
any
Um,
insights there or how one would go about? But I don't hear a lot of governance related companies showing up, and they're building another LLM model on top of the response to filter out this information based on the access control and kind of rubbing off information or dropping things. But different approaches people are attempting, but it is to some extent for adoption of this in a mainstream across an enterprise is a very limiting factor.
Yeah. To your point, Shekhar, I think I've heard everything from it's turtles all the way. Like I've seen people trying to solve this governance problem through LLMs or chaining of LLMs. So you have one LLM that is trying to figure out access control, another one trying to figure out the exact answer, and the third one generating the response. But I think personally for me, the solution that most people are falling towards, and it seems to be the most logical way of approaching it, is to rely on traditional uh, software principles or known software principles for access control. So you can code your access control in your Python, Java, Node.js stack, and leave and only send part of the information to the LLM and ask it to generate responses on part of that content itself. So it kind of combines the best of both worlds of using traditional software or traditional coding paradigms for doing what it does best, which is deterministic stuff, like does Arpit have access to sales data? And let the LLM do what it does best, which is generating content, generating a response based on certain inputs or certain amount of content that it is getting. So I think these solutions are going to mature. Um, I'm yet to see a more dedicated sort of a product that targets this, but but I think it's going to be more layers of an LLM, which is more generic in nature, and then a product like Appsmith or another sort of traditional coding paradigm, which kind of sits on top of it for access controls.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's almost
Uh,
like you have a master expert inside a company who knows all the data about everything. And when someone asks that question, like where like somebody comes and asks you, Abhishek, and he says, "Hey, I'm not sure I'm allowed to tell you or I know to disclose to that." That feature part is people are trying to figure out desperately how to execute it so that people don't lose interest in not using it. At the same time, it gives enough information for them to be excited about using and get their job done.
yeah, yeah, that's right. So we're gonna continue talking about this a little bit down the line. Uh, for now, I want to just talk about one more interesting uh, data point here, uh, and then finally we'll move to our discussion section here. Uh, we asked our respondents about outcomes. Where have they seen LLMs, AI being successful, and where have they seen stuff not being successful? Uh, the first most successful use cases have been around writing code or data queries. I think this is where GitHub's Copilot has been super successful. And I believe, at least at Appsmith, we see around 30% of our code now being generated by GitHub's Copilot. We've also seen AI being successful at document analysis and summary. We spoke about a bit before about this. The third one, chatbots for internal IT support, has been again super successful. The places where AI has not been very successful is sentiment analysis. This is again going back to Arpit's point about the previous generation of AI being focused on sentiment analysis, but this generation not being very good at it. That has again played out. The second place where AI has not been surprisingly successful is image generation or modification. This was a bit surprising to me because I think we've all played with Midjourney and Dali quite a bit, and it seems like they're amazing artists, but it's also possible they're not great at listening to instructions. I found it hard to get Midjourney and OpenAI both to have correct spellings in their images, or to listen to instructions very carefully and replicate those instructions. So I think a lot of people are also facing that same sort of a problem where image generation or modification is not working out that well. But having said that, I think Shekhar, Accel has invested in a startup, I think, which you called Synthesia, which is actually really good at this. So it's possible that a vertical software provider will be more successful than a company trying to use an API for image generation.
Yeah, so I think you will see more and more such verticalized apps. At least we recently funded one company which is automating the co-pilot for SDR function, right?
Mhm.
So that how SDRs can be more effective and productive by at least 30 to 40%, like co-pilot that you see in the code generation, right?
Mhm.
So and similarly, we just came across several pitches around contact center automation,
Mhm.
speech to text, text to analysis, and then finding an answer and then back to speech, so that contact center can be fully automated. So these are like vertical narrow, and they expect some 20-30% of things can be done in a automated way, and then maybe rest assisted way.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. That makes sense. Uh, So finally, we just have one more data point here, and then we are going to move to our discussion. What we found was most companies would actually prefer to use open source. Like 46, nearly 47% of our respondents said they would prefer to use open source tools to build AI solutions, uh, versus only 24% said they would prefer proprietary. But when you actually look at what are they using today for today's processes and today's experiments, most customers, or rather most respondents, have been using commercial off the shelf software, and only 10% have actually been using development frameworks like LangChain, Llama Index. And we've also seen about 14% of our respondents use a low code platform for integrating AI capabilities. So this is where we see this gap here. There's overwhelmingly a preference to use open source tools to build AI solutions, but it does seem a majority of our respondents are still relying on commercial off the shelf APIs, as well as commercial off the shelf software to introduce AI inside their organization. And I think this is probably something that, again, startups can address. There's clearly a demand for open source, but not enough open source out there.
Abhishek, one question here, maybe Arpit can also answer. Is the concern you believe coming because my data, which is in my under my control, if I give into this third party LLM models, my data is going outside my boundary, versus if it was running within my boundary, I feel I'm able to control it. Since no third party LLMs gives such kind of a control, only choice today is using open source model like Llama or many of the other Mistral and other models. So I'm wondering whether there is the question of control leading to this, or why they are thinking about open source being important.
Yeah, so I think this graph is a classic representation of that gap between the want and can. So people, I think, want open source solutions for I think both these reasons. For two reasons actually. One is what you said, which is security, where if the model is hosted within my own environment, I have full sort of control over the data access. And what it can sort of what sort of data, who can access it, what it can access. And the other is also, I've seen people trying to leverage open source models in the Appsmith community, because it's much easier to fine tune that LLM model for their particular use case. So the more commercially hosted software like OpenAI or Azure AI, etc., it's much more costly and much harder to fine tune for those niche use cases, versus having Mistral, Codium, Llama, etc., is much easier to kind of work with in a smaller setup. So I think these are the two big reasons why people are wanting to do open source. But obviously, that gap between I want versus I can, it's not easy to run your own models. People are still relying on OpenAI and hosted solutions. And I think the big shift will happen once OpenAI, Azure AI, etc. The these large players make it like really, really simple and bring it down to basically, let's run an EC2 instance, put your binary on top of it, and just run it. Once it comes down to a pure Docker image, we are going to see a massive shift in that adoption.
That makes sense, Arpit. Thank you. I want to move on to the section here where we're just gonna have a open-ended discussion. And there's a question to both Shekhar, you and Arpit. First question is like, will AI live up to the hype? Everybody's so excited. There's obviously so much money being thrown at startups, and we recently heard about Sam Altman trying to raise $7 trillion for AI chips. Will it live up to hype? That's the first question to both of you.
Okay, let me give a shot at this. See, the imaginative aspect of what it can do has gone way ahead of the current capabilities companies have to absorb and deliver.
Hmm.
So the hype cycle is definitely ahead of it.
Hmm.
So in the next 1 or 2 years, what people are thinking, like, kind of a deflationary situation where every job is replaced or everything is being 30% productive, I'm not sure that is going to happen. It will take a lot
Hmm.
longer. But if you take 5 to 10 year horizon, the pieces of technology is there, and there has to be some new technology and new controls and maturity level required in enterprises to absorb all of this and translate into real value. So is the hype cycle ahead? The answer is yes. Is hype one day will become real? At least I am in the camp that if you take a 5 to 10 year horizon, this will come real, and it has to happen before people lose interest.
Yeah, I agree. Shekhar is saying in the previous AI hype cycle that we saw in 2016, 17. So me and Abhishek, we were running a startup which was trying to responses, and we believed that we were using more traditional NLP techniques, more traditional machine learning techniques to try and achieve that outcome. And fast forward 5 years in with LLMs and this new generation of large language models, this has become a lot easier. It's literally become the template for trying out LLMs for people to try it out.
Hmm.
So what was really hard and was a $1 million company back in 2016, 17 has now become a tutorial for this sort of hype cycle. So I agree with what Shekhar is saying. Maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, the hype is definitely ahead. But fast forward to 5 or 10 years, things that we are imagining today will probably become getting started tutorials for the next sort of cycle that happens and as technology moves forward.
Yeah, that's a thank you both for those interesting uh, points here. So it does seem like over a long enough time scale, these things that we're talking about will come true. The question is, will people lose interest by then? Will the investments reduce by then? And that could have a major effect on those things coming true. Uh, and Arpit, the point that you made about something being, the example that you gave about a customer support application being like a tutorial today versus 5 years ago, it was, the source of like many millions of dollars of investment. That's a really interesting point. It also tells us tech can just move ahead a lot faster than you might expect it to. And at least from what we saw, anybody who was playing in that customer support automation game 5 years ago does not seem to have survived. They either ran out of money or they ran out of faith and belief, and they had to pivot and move on. Uh, while the new players are actually like succeeding today. So that's really interesting.
If you look at any tech, Abhishek, in general, it has its own kind of the cycle of adoption,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like, how long has been our client server? How long has been the
Hmm.
cloud? And still there is
Hmm.
people managing mainframes with COBOL. That has not
Hmm.
moved. How much has been data has come with the modern data lakehouse architectures and the modern data infrastructure, but still people are stuck with very old technology of
Hmm.
companies that are historic, right?
Hmm.
10, 15 years back, and it takes time. So while tech can move fast, absorption of that technology into an organization, into an enterprise, takes time. And
Hmm.
that is where a massive number of opportunities exist, including for
Hmm.
Appsmith, because you
Hmm.
are making it easier to pull all this technology with your existing data of the company as well as the technology via UI, and making it easy to for absorbing and taking
Hmm.
benefit out of that inside a company. And that has to be enabled more and more to pull
Hmm.
technology into the company,
Hmm.
right? after
Yeah.
after I don't know how long, even now, public our actual cloud usage is probably less than 30% worldwide now, even today,
Hmm.
right? Benefits are well known, but it's not that they are not realizing it. Every enterprise realizes it, but it is not easy to move.
Hmm.
It takes massive amount of work. Yeah.
Hmm. That makes sense. I think the point around absorption of technology is a really relevant one, because this is where you can completely time it the wrong way. You can be too bullish here, but turns out your customers are not ready for it. And that's why you fail. And not because they will never be ready for it. The reality is they do need a little bit of soak time before they
Yes.
can
Yeah. Well
adopt
said.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So it's also like a positive thing for startups. Then I find a lot of entrepreneurs. I've been meeting a lot of entrepreneurs who are in a hurry to go do something in AI because they believe uh, this hype cycle or this sort of technology adoption cycle is going to disappear. But that's probably not going to be the case. You probably have a little more time to go try a new startup in the space because, like you said, the absorption period is actually going to be long here. Uh, so there's probably no need to hurry for every single entrepreneur who wants to build an AI company.
Just to add to that, I think there is also going to be a bunch of, let's call it processes or business
Hmm.
operations that are actually going to swing the pendulum in the opposite direction. For
Hmm.
example, when it comes to, let's say, fraud or risk management inside
Hmm.
financial sectors or banks. Recently, there was a case where using a deep fake video,
Hmm.
somebody convinced an employee to transfer $25 million. So
Hmm.
now, in-person interactions, in-person operations may also sort of swing, uh, may come back in resurgence, um, instead of everything being AI first or tech first, etc.
Hmm.
The fact that human to human interactions are going to get, uh, I think, more prevalence in the coming 5 to 10 years.
Hmm. Got it. So what do you think is like because of some of the negative effects of AI applications, some companies might actually also delay adopting
Yeah,
AI for really like everything. Instead,
yeah,
create a lot more barriers so that AI
yeah,
cannot enter their organization or
yeah,
AI applications cannot enter the organizations. Got it.
yeah. It's not because they can't, but because they don't want to.
Hmm. Got it. That makes sense. Uh, the second follow-up question here is, what are the business processes and operations that you believe will be fundamentally different? Shikhar, I'd love for you to answer it first.
Yeah. So this one is a very interesting question. So if you look at it, I think we will see AI in three phases.
Hmm.
The first phase, which we're already seeing through, and still many companies are yet to absorb, but some of the
Hmm.
modern companies are absorbing, is the kind of AI add-on on the machine
Hmm.
learning, as you said, prediction materials or recommendation engines, or some sort of a fraud detection using well-trained mathematical models, or intrusion detection, security detection, or vulnerability detection. Many of those are getting automated via AI machine learning models. So that is the first phase, is still going on, lots of work going on there. The second phase is the co-pilot mode. You only spoke about the code co-pilot mode, but you should expect a co-pilot to every well-defined
Hmm.
job in an enterprise. So if I'm
Hmm.
a marketing person, there will be a co-pilot for maybe an ad generation, a co-pilot
Hmm.
for my content generation that are already showing up, and a co-pilot for my keyword management. And you will start seeing that where people will start getting an assisted tool that increases their productivity. That's the second wave, which we are just starting to see for a specific function like code generation. But
Hmm.
that too, it's for new code. It's not for my fixing in my existing code or looking at entire my code and say what I have to fix and so on. Or you'll start seeing for test case generation or testing and so on. So that is the second wave. The third wave is where I believe it's complete AI agent automation, full autonomous models, which at least takes significant number of well-defined tasks and runs without human intervention. And the confidence level is very high that they do a decent job at it. And when these agents are self aware that they cannot answer the questions that is being requested, if the quality of the response is not there, seek human help to pull them in so that they can respond and assist. So that model is what I call as the third wave, and that everybody's talking about it, but it's quite far away. So
Hmm.
at least that's what I feel in 5 years. So the first automation, AI automation agents would be for well-defined tasks, customer
Hmm.
support, as we spoke about, call center roles, or where there is already data, there is already an existing process, there are a set of existing tools. People do a very specific set of activities repeatedly,
Hmm.
then you will see this, for example, calendar scheduling. You saw calendly and many of these products as early phase, but you will start
Yeah.
seeing very sophisticated scheduling products that almost mimics a human intelligence layer in terms of all the data. They understand your calendar very deeply, not like every
Hmm.
time slot is available, and they have to manage that as like a supply demand basis and so on. So you will see these kind of sophisticated agents starting to show, because it's a very well defined task.
Hmm.
Whenever there is a well defined task, you will see that. And in definitely slightly ill defined tasks, such as strategic decision making, I'm not sure in the 5 years one could do it.
Hmm.
Or overall
Hmm.
software architecture of how I'm going to build end to end architecture for this use case, or what would be a world class UI would look like for a specific set of customers, or my segment of customers. Even figuring out what my segment people are, what they like about it, how I feed it, it's still a long way to go.
Hmm. Thanks, Shekhar. I think that was a really good summary of of the predictions that we are seeing in this AI space. Arpit, I have a question for you. Maybe you could give me the CTO's point of view here. Uh, do you expect your engineers to be replaced by AI agents? And would love to know what kind of work that your engineering team is doing today that you do expect AI to be great at.
Yeah, I think this is a question that we all asked ourselves. The first time Copilot got released. Uh, when Copilot got released like a year and a half ago, everybody was worried. Our engineer is going to get replaced. I think the answer now, 1 year down the line, is a resounding no. And
Mhm.
in every cycle of technology that we've seen, right from the Gutenberg press to LLMs today, is that the nature of this creative work of writing code, writing books, writing poems, etc., just evolves. So now, I think it's a human in the loop workflows that is going to get the co-pilot approach that is going to make engineers a lot more productive, a lot more relevant than they have been before. The act that I don't have to spend time doing a lot of the grunt work. For example, I don't want to write boilerplate code. I don't want to write, I don't want to review necessarily other people's code every single day. So a lot of those things of my job, parts of my job that I don't enjoy as much today, those will start to get either automated away or will start to work in a human in the loop sort of cycle. So
Mhm.
I think AI is here to stay. Developers are very much here to stay, and it behooves every engineer, every person coder out there to learn how to work with the LLM instead of against it.
Hmm. Got it. Thanks, Arpit. So I think what it sounds like, engineers are probably not going to be threatened by AI. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, but also you do need engineers to adopt AI because the ones who don't are just going to be unproductive.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Let's move to the second question. We are going to spend just a little bit of time here. And Arpit, I would love to hear your opinion about this.
Mhm.
One of the things that stood out in our survey was that respondents seem to prefer the OSS AI tools. How do you think proprietary versus OSS LLMs and other alternatives, how is that going to evolve moving forward?
Right. So I think the proprietary tools by OpenAI, by Google, etc., are largely going to be built by really big companies because it involves a lot of training. It involves Sam Altman is raising $7 trillion. It's not a trivial amount of money, so it requires a lot of cost, human capital to build and maintain those large LLM models. Uh, and this is going to be the arena for large companies. For the rest of the world out there, they are going to kind of work a lot more on more focused, smaller, niche language models.
Mhm.
Somewhere I was reading a term called SLMs, small language models, not large
Mhm.
language models. So they're going to be a large part of the world is going to be run and operated by these open source smaller models that do well in a specific use case. As Shekhar mentioned, text to speech, video generation for specific, HR or L&D use cases. So they are going to do well here, and the large language models might be used. I think there is an interesting school of thought out there, which is using the LLMs by OpenAI to train the smaller language models, which then
Mhm.
actually get deployed in production. So there's a one-time sort of effort of actually training your sort of open source model and then using that a lot more cost effectively in production. Uh, and overarchingly, OSS makes it much easier for a community to fine tune and improve the outcomes, the accuracy, the performance in that niche sort of world as compared to a large language model, which is very generic and they just have to work for a lot of different use cases instead of doing really, really well in one use case.
Hmm. Got it. Thanks, Arpit. I want to move on to our final question of the day here, which is what impact are we seeing on the commercial B2B SaaS market? Uh, as well as the big question, are companies going to be buying or building their custom solutions? Shekhar, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, so this is a very complex and nuanced question.
Hmm.
See, what is SaaS at the end of the day? SaaS is a productivity tool that has
Hmm.
been given to a specific segment of users to do their job better, right? If I look at a CRM, a sales team to be
Hmm.
able to manage the entire customers, potential customers, and their interest level so that I can track them, I can reach them, and I can answer their question and translate
Hmm.
into customers. Right. Similarly, a cloud-based SaaS customer support tools to enable to support your customers post sales so that you can respond back to their queries and increase their NPS, reduce their churn, and make sure they last with you as a customer for a long period of time. So that is to be your SaaS B2B companies. Now, if you say, okay, what's when AI comes, what does it mean? Will people continue to use a horizontal SaaS product for support with AI? Or are they going to use a verticalized SaaS tool with the AI? Or will they build their own tool? Is the question you're asking.
Hmm.
No, it's a hard question. My hypothesis is, in general, product versus service has been always a dichotomy where product always wins if there exists one. Whenever there is no product, then people go for services. So if an AI tool comes which is generic enough for a specific use cases and industries that can be adopted to be used by enterprises for their companies, then a product wins. If that is not possible, then they have to build or find service providers to build for them to custom solution wise. So for example, the challenge with all the SaaS tools is today the SaaS tools input happens from the people who use those tools,
Hmm.
right? Or I integrate and pull some of the data to start with, either from a Salesforce or marketing or finance or HR or support, one of the kind of infrastructure element where all the data exists, and I pull it as a starting point. then you add additional information to get your job done. On most of the
Hmm.
SaaS tools, that's how it works. But if I want to generate a world class AI product that fully autonomously works, then you need to know a lot more about the company, the process, how it works, and how their customer needs and how it has been responded back, and history of the customer engagement. All the data has to be synthesized and used, which means the product and your data has to somehow get managed together to be able to solve. That is not it's not clear to me how easy for a SaaS company to make it so self-sufficient that it can absorb the data and do it. There's always some amount of work to be done by enterprises, and tools that enable to tune the AI models, of even vertical AI models,
Hmm.
on-prem open source vertical AI models,
Hmm.
but with the data that I have, and the way it behaves is going to be different from another companies how they do tune it. That capability, I think, will what make the difference. At least my hypothesis.
Hmm. That makes sense. Arpit, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I the part that I agree with Shekhar is, that a product will sort of win over services, and the more that we can kind of productize a B2B SaaS application, uh, they will almost invariably win over the services. But personally, I think a lot of companies, at least over the next sort of 1 or 2 years, are not going to end up building custom solutions because, as I said, as we discussed earlier, like, there's a gap between a want and a can. And I don't
Hmm.
think they're going to invest as much in custom solutions, and they're just going to go out, use hosted services, hosted products, etc. out there. Uh, and over a period of time, we're going to see these layers on top of OpenAI either get eaten up by Google or Microsoft itself. Those use cases get eaten up if it's like a thin layer above a large language model, or then sort of branch out into like a more successful SaaS business. But over the next couple of years, personally, I don't think there is going to be as much around like sort of very niche custom solutions as much as they're going to be layers on top of large language models.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it does sound like there's probably just like in the previous SaaS generation, we saw these data integration and ETL tools that started taking off, like a Zapier or even something like a MuleSoft and a data warehousing tool like Snowflake. What they started enabling was helping data go from one place to another with the explicit purpose of making that other product better, and the experience of the user much better in that other product. What it sounds like is that there's probably an AI layer on top of this, where there's going to be tools that help data go from one place to another with an LLM on top of it, so that the product can actually be customized with data proprietary to the company and proprietary to the customer. I think that's probably like another use case that will emerge, so that every software product that has AI is custom customer that is paying for it. So that certainly is a pretty interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
Now, this I actually
One
want to
one
just
point.
yes, Arpit,
Sorry, I just wanted to
go on,
also
Arpit.
add one small thing, which was that we're going to see a lot of AI use cases sort of interweaved inside products in like all of the small places, uh, instead of like a big bang, B2B SaaS focused AI. So you're just going to
Hmm.
see a summary of this conversation in the caption,
Hmm.
and it's just going to be very transparent, very interweaved experiences instead of a full-fledged thing.
Hmm. That makes sense, Arpit. With this, I want to close this section of our webinar today. Thank you so much, Shekhar, for your inputs here. It was great from you. And I hope everybody who's heard Shekhar has gotten a sense of where he as an investor is seeing the space evolve, and where are all the places where there are opportunities for startups and entrepreneurs to start companies in. So much, Shekhar. Uh,
Thank you,
Hope you
Abhishek.
have a great rest of the day. And I want to then hand it off to Arpit, who's going to talk about Appsmith's. Pleasure, Shekhar. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Now we want to go talk a bit about Appsmith's AI capabilities. After that really engaging discussion, I think it's time to see some action of how you can use AI inside Appsmith to achieve some of the outcomes that we spoke about. So I'm going to hand it off to Arpit, who's going to talk about AI use cases in Appsmith and show you a demo of how can you build something in Appsmith.
Thanks, Abhishek. Super excited. Let's jump into it. Based on our conversations with hundreds of customers, we understood that companies want to leverage AI to power operational efficiency within their teams. They also want to do this easily and securely. This is where Appsmith AI comes in. To showcase the power of Appsmith's inbuilt AI functionalities, today I'm going to demo a loan approval and management application. This is a typical human in the loop workflow that involves reading, understanding, and memorizing a detailed SOP by the loan agent, comparing that policy with the KYC details provided by the user, and then making a decision whether to approve or reject the loan app. Typically, this takes about 30 minutes per application, but with Appsmith AI, we can reduce this time to 5 to 10 minutes per app. Let's see how. This is because Appsmith AI ingests the policy document shown here, and as you can see, it is a detailed standard operating procedure that every loan agent needs to memorize and understand. Given a customer's details after this, it compares the relevant information against the SOP we just saw and provides a recommendation in order to approve or reject the loan. This allows the loan agent to review the recommendation and make a decision. In this particular app, the AI not just gives a recommendation but also provides the reasons for doing so. Let's take John Doe for example. Now, John Doe, we want to approve his application, and here is where we see another application of Appsmith AI. It given a particular image of KYC image provided by the customer. This could be a driving license, passport, or other national identities. It extracts the relevant information and populates the form fields. This is a huge time saver for agents that are doing data entry. Once we are satisfied as an agent, we simply click approve and the loan is approved. So how was all of this built? I'm going to very quickly dive into the edit mode of this Appsmith application to see how the sausages are made. Here you can see a very standard drag and drop UI builder for Appsmith, which allows developers to construct and build the app in a WYSIWYG fashion. In order to leverage AI, the developer can choose from a bunch of native AI integrations such as OpenAI, Google, or Anthropic, or also leverage Appsmith AI, which is the inbuilt functionality provided by the Appsmith application. Here I've already connected and created a data source for Appsmith AI called the loan agent. In this particular data source, I have uploaded the Acme FinTech SOP, and this is available for AI to ingest, create its embeddings, and then leverage those embeddings to create a response. I can create a new query for this particular data source, and I've called it the loan decision. As part of Appsmith AI, I can choose from a bunch of actions ranging from generating a text, classification, summarization, and even, as we saw, extracting entities from an image. I provide a prompt, a helpful prompt, a descriptive prompt, ask the Appsmith AI to use the context from the files and simply click run. This creates a lot of these recommendations that we saw within the application. This is really easy to do and it's very quick to build. So, where does security come in all of this? We obviously do not want every business user or every developer being able to view information and generate recommendations for policies, for data that they do not have access to. Appsmith has an inbuilt granular access control, which allows developers to define rules where they can say that person A will not have access to execute this loan decision query and they will not be able to leverage the recommendations provided by this AI prompt. On the other hand, person B has the access to do so. So, using this granular access control across the board, developers can define access, read, write, or execute access for various queries or UI widgets within Appsmith. And the best part, because all of this is self hosted within your environment, this makes a lot of security and infosec requirements an absolute breeze. So here we've seen how we can leverage AI and especially Appsmith AI in order to generate or create AI powered business outcomes, build internal tools, and improve your efficiency within your team. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Arpit, for that demo. It was really exciting and fun to see those use cases built inside Appsmith. And to our audience who's been watching so far, thank you so much for staying with us so far. I want to leave a few resources so that you can actually continue with your journey of discovering AI use cases. First, you can download the ebook that has all the survey results and has a lot more detail than I presented. So you should go to this link to find the AI ebook. If you want to start building AI use cases, you should go to app.appsmith.com, sign up, and we already have integrations with OpenAI, uh, Gemini, as well as Anthropic, and you can also integrate with any AI API which has a URL. So you can get started with AppSmith right away. And third, you can actually meet us in Bangalore on February 27th. We are doing a meetup for AppSmith users and customers in Bangalore. Please go sign up at the link so that you can come meet us at the Bangalore International Center on 27th. If you're going to be there, definitely come say hello to me and Arpit. We would love to hang out with you and talk to you more about AI. With this, thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. See you.